The pale lavender light of Zora Prime's twin suns filtered through crystalline clouds. As the Zorathian capital of Chalunas pulsed with its usual serene glow, stately spires of refracted prisms rose like fingers toward the heavens, catching and splitting sunlight into 1,000 dancing rainbows across the marble plazas below. Children chased luminescent insects through arching gardens, and scholars debated the latest cosmological discoveries in colonnaded forums. It was a world that prided itself on harmony between mind and nature, technology and spirit, science and art. Yet on this morning, the air crackled with tension in the lofty halls of the Imperium, where the translucent walls displayed star charts and astrophasic harmonics in iridescent glyphs. Chancellor Auriel Virist stood before the great conclave. Her graceful form, clad in flowing robes of opaline fabric, was bathed in streaming beams of refracted light. Behind her, the holographic map of the Andromeda rim flickered, its clusters of stars and nebulas overriding the usual tranquility. With a pattern of crimson warning sigils, honored members of the conclave, she began, her voice ringing like wind chimes caught in a breeze. We have received a transmission that chills the blood. A hush settled over the assembled delegate stall. Slender figures whose bioluminescent veins glowed faintly in the dim chamber. The Chancellor raised a slender hand, and the hologram shifted to display the battered silhouette of a Zorathian outpost, its walls cracked, energy conduits sparking. On a hovering screen beside her, the distress call looped in a fractured mosaic of urgency, repeating, "To any allied fleet, Vraxx's Void Fleet has breached the outer defense ring at Sector Theta 9. Losses critical. Artillery positions collapsed. If we are to save the heart of Zora, we require reinforcements." Over, gasps fluttered through the audience. The heart of Zora, the crystalline core that powered the planet's ley line network and maintained its ecological genius, was the very essence of their civilization. Its loss would mean annihilation. Across the galaxy, in Earth's council chambers aboard the lunar spire, Admiral Helena Reyes watched the Zorathian feed through a secure quantum channel. The spire, a rotating ring suspended above the moon's surface, housed the combined leadership of the Terran Defense Coalition and Earth's diplomatic corps. Through its panoramic view screens, Earth's blue marble glowed gently beneath, a distant reminder of home. Chancellor Reyes said, turning to Ambassador Kepler, Earth's envoy to the Zorathian Accord. "They're asking for our Dreadnought." Ambassador Kepler's eyes, dark and tired from weeks of negotiation, reflected the holographic image of the ravaged outpost. Their outer ring was thought impenetrable. "If Vraxx comes thrice as strong," she let the sentence hang, laden with unspoken dread. Reyes clenched her fist. "The Horus is fully operational. It slipped its shakedown just last month. Neutronium armor, gravity-bore cannons, antimatter torpedo bays. No fleet in this sector can stand against it. But deploying it risks escalation with the Zargathian warlord." Kepler nodded slowly. "Yet if we refuse, Zora Prime falls, and then it's only a matter of time before Vraxx's ambitions turn toward Earth." A drumbeat sounded through the chamber. Priority alert. Engineers at the rear stations flicked cursors across schematics of the Dreadnought Horus. Admiral Reyes, second in command, Commodore Jean May, adjusted her uniform as she approached the conference table. "Admiral, all systems green. FTL. Drive warm, shields at full calibration, weapon arrays in alignment. We can launch on your order." Her voice was steady to steady, perhaps for the gravity of the choice. Reyes closed her eyes, drawing a steady breath. Memories of Terra, of her childhood in the Cascadian forests, of the singing glaciers of Antarctica flooded her mind. She'd sworn an oath to defend her home. Now, that oath extended across light years. "Very well," she said, placing her hand on the map. "Open a channel. Inform the Zorathians that Earth accepts. The Horus launches in 1 hour, with full escort support. May our arrival not be too late." Back on Zora Prime, the message reached Chancellor Auriel as she conferred with General Shalrin, commander of the Zorathian Defense Forces. The holographic crystal blinked on a daze of rose-hued granite. Auriel touched its surface, and the Vox transmission of Admiral Reyes appeared, resolute against a star-speckled backdrop. "The Dreadnought Horus, under Admiral Reyes, makes for Zora Prime. ETA 14 standard hours. Rhea's voice declared, "Hold fast, Zorathians. Earth stands with you." A swell of relief rippled through the conclave chamber. Ariel's eyes glistened as she turned to Shaoran, whose rigid posture slackened in a rare display of emotion. "Tell our people," she said, voice thick with gratitude. "Earth's dreadnought comes." In the days that followed, every sector of Zora Prime raced to prepare. Crystal forges redoubled their efforts to reinforce planetary shields. The Sky Wardens' winged interceptors of gleaming filigree patrolled in tighter patterns, intercepting Vraxx's probing fighters. At Sector Theta 9, where the first shots had fallen, Zorathian engineers worked feverishly to repair breaches and reroute power flows. Dr. Irithnal, chief astrophysicist, crouched over an energy conduit, sweat glistening on her brow. "If we can just stabilize the flux," she muttered, "we might stall them for another cycle." High above, in the blackness between stars, the Horus slipped out of the tachyon slipstream. Its hull, a gleaming obelisk of polished steel and neutronium, reflected the light of distant suns. Winged support frigates and escort corvettes formed a protective diamond around it, their sensors straining for any sign of Vraxx's fleet. Inside the command bridge, crew members moved with quiet precision, calibrating sensors, charging railgun capacitors, reviewing holographic schematics of Zora Prime's orbital defense rays. Admiral Reyes strode onto the bridge, her dark hair swept back, her uniform's rank insignia glinting under the overhead lights. She paused, surveying the silent determination on every face. "All stations report readiness," she said. "Prepare for deceleration. We break the tachyon corridor in 10 minutes." As the engines hummed, the violent collision of political will, scientific urgency, and raw courage coalesced into a singular purpose: to stand between the predatory ambitions of Vraxx, the unyielding and the only home the Zorathians had ever known. In that moment, two worlds so different in hue and history became allies bound by fate. Below, on the lavender plains of Zora Prime, the skies darkened with the first fleet of Zargathian raiders. In the distance, the crystalline spires of Chalunas trembled under the pulse of orbital bombardment. The defenders braced for the storm, but far above them, a spear of earth steel carved through the void, coming just in time to answer their call. And so, as the Dreadnought Horus prepared to emerge into sublight range, the future of two civilizations hung in the balance, held fast by a fragile thread of hope and by the unbreakable resolve of those who dared to challenge the void. The Horus thundered from its launch cradle at Cape Aurora, the core reactors roaring like newborn stars as they ignited the plasma drives. A pall of ionized gas glowed beneath the Dreadnought's lance-like hull, illuminating the frozen tundra round Lake Vostok in eerie emerald hues. Tens of thousands watched the spectacle on distant holoscreens, but on the bridge of the Horus itself, every eye was fixed on the arc of tachyon conduit ahead, a swirling tunnel of shifting light and gravity, the gateway to Zora Prime. Commander Jiro Tanaka stood at the command dais, helmet under his arm, the stars reflecting in his dark, determined eyes. Around him, officers ran final diagnostics, shields calibrated to resist the Void Fleet's gravitic mines, antimatter torpedoes secured in magnetic holsters, and the all-important sensory nets tuned to pierce subspace anomalies. 10 minutes to slipstream entry, he intoned, voice measured. "Lieutenant Kovet, show me the predictive trajectory for the most stable exit point." Lieutenant Ayana Kovet tapped at her holo interface, etching three-dimensional vectors in midair. Her bioluminescent tattoos pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Commander, there's a 73.6% chance of neutral slip at Sector Delta 4, but the grav mass residuals there are high. For a cleaner egress with only a minor risk of spatial shear, I recommend Sector Gamma 7. She zoomed the projection in, revealing a gap in the tachyon eddy that would spit them into sublight space, just beyond Zora's outer ring defenses. Tanaka considered the trade-off. Gamma 7 it is. Notify the engineering deck to reroute power for an extended slip. I want maximum tachyon flux and minimal distortion on arrival." He paused, glancing at the portrait of Earth that hung in the center of the bridge's viewports. He imagined the lavender skies of Zora Prime beyond that slip, the fate of an Entire civilization riding on their success. Steady as she goes, he said. All hands brace for FTL transition. The deck trembled as tachyon injectors whined, and every console flared with crystalline energy. The swirling colors outside. The viewports coalesced into a tunnel of brilliance, fractals of light bending and twisting in impossible arcs. The crew felt the tug of relativistic forces in their chests, though inertial compensators kept them safe. For a heartbeat, time seemed to blur, and then, with a lancing jolt, the horse emerged on the far side. Out of the infernal beauty of the slipstream, they found themselves in the dim glow of Zora Prime's exosphere. But the scene was nothing like the visions in the council chambers. Below, violet dust storms raged across the northern continents, kicked up by the shockwaves of orbital bombardment. The sky was torn by streaks of energy fire, and dozens of Vraxx's glass-winged fighters darted like angry hornets around shattered orbital platforms. Contact, Lieutenant Kovic called out. Multiple bogies closing in from Vector 120. The tactical display flared, sleek enemy silhouettes cutting through the storm. They masked their approach inside gravimetric distortions. We're too close to avoid detection. Adrenaline rippled through the bridge. Commander Tanaka's mind raced through tactical options. An FTL retreat would take precious hours the Zorathians did not have. Raise shields to maximum modulation, he ordered. Redirect secondary batteries to point defense. Lieutenant, Redoff, hail Zora Prime emergency frequency and relay boarding coordinates for evac teams. Lieutenant Pavel Redoff tapped the comm crystal. A moment later, the holographic image of General Shalrin flickered into existence, his stern visage marred by ash smudges and fatigue. Horus, we've got scattered survivors in the eastern basalt fields. Civilians trapped under collapsed spires. We need immediate airlift and ground support. His voice crackled with urgency. Tanaka gave a curt nod. Understood, General. We'll deploy assault pods and field marshals as soon as we clear these fighters. He turned to the tactical officer. Unlock railguns. Fire at will. Priority 1, enemy capital ships. Priority 2, fighters. Let's clear a corridor on the external monitors. The Horus's turrets pivoted into position. In a flash of emerald light, a railgun bolt tore through the nearest fighter squadron, sending plasma ribbons arcing into the void. The capital ship's sleek, obsidian dreadnoughts opened fire in return, lancing bolts that smashed harmlessly into the Horus's reinforced shields. The dreadnought shuddered, but held firm as secondary batteries launched salvo after salvo of antimatter microtorpedoes, each impact blossoming into a maelstrom of white fire. Below, the Zorathian sky wardens regrouped around the Horus's protective umbrella, their crystalline wings reflecting the battle in prismatic echoes. Wing leaders soared into the fray, herding enemy fighters away from civilian convoys and guiding them under the Horus's guns. In the bridge, Lieutenant Kovic allowed herself a small, proud smile. Zorathian squadrons are gaining ground. They're rallying behind our assault. Minutes felt like hours. The vacuum of space became a maelstrom of deadly beauty. Then, as the Horus pummeled the last of the fighters, a colossal shape peeled away from the battered Scourge Eternal's escort. The warlord Vraxx's personal destroyer, the Night Whaler. Its hull bristled with tar-black spines, and a looming glaive-shaped prow carved a menacing silhouette against the purple sky. Vraxx's flagship, Redoff whispered, all mingled with fear. He trailed off as the Night Whaler unleashed a nova burst of focused gravitic pulse designed to collapse subspace around its target. The shockwave rippled through the void, and for a moment, the Horus's shields flickered. A hush fell on the bridge. Commander Tanaka's voice rang out. Divert full reactor output to forward shields compensate. With emergency flux suppressors, technicians reacted in a blur, rerouting power with deft precision. Outside, the pulse slammed into the dreadnought's hull, but the neutronium armor absorbed the brunt. The shields held. Now, Tanaka growled. Open fire on the Night Whaler. Fully charged the bore cannons. The bridge hummed as energy coalesced into two incandescent rods behind the dreadnought's forward turrets. When they fired, the beams lashed across space like twin lances of pure light, piercing the Night Whaler's prow with concussive force. Sparks danced across the black hull. and the destroyer veered off course, wounded. Amid the chaos, the evacuation pods ejected from the Horus's belly, their transparent hulls glowing as they dropped toward the surface. A squadron of Zorathian Marines and Earth-infused peacekeepers streamed out, cloaking sprayers scattering ferromimetic dampeners to calm panicked refugees. The pods pierced the violet storms, splashing down near fractured spires where survivors huddled. Troops leapt free, forming protective rings as medical drones hovered to stabilize the injured. Back on the bridge, the night whaler, half destroyed, tried to regroup with the remnants of Vraxx's fleet, but the Horus, riding its momentum, tracked the fleeing vessels. Lieutenant Covet, lock onto night whaler. Secondary torpedoes fire at will. 3 torpedoes streaked out and slammed into the destroyer's engine modules. The night whaler erupted in a superheated bloom, then exploded into shards that drifted into blackness. A cheer rose from the bridge crew, but Commander Tanaka allowed himself only a curt nod. Good work. Status report. Lieutenant Redoff's fingers flew. Escort squadrons neutralized. Boarding teams inserted. Evac secured for 80% of civilian clusters. Enemy fleet is in full retreat toward the outer belt. No sign of Vraxx himself. Relief rippled through the crew at that last admission. Tanaka exhaled. Very well. Hold position here. Admiral Reyes will want a debrief. He turned to the viewport. Below, the battered but unbowed surface of Zora Prime stretched out, a world ravaged by war, but standing defiantly beneath the resurrected hope of Earth's Dreadnought. The violet storms churned, but where the Horus's energy beam had cut a swath through the clouds, sunlight peeked down onto trembling spires and survivors beginning to stir. As the Dreadnought's shields glowed softly in the twilight, Tanaka allowed himself one thought. This was only the beginning. Vraxx the Unyielding would come again, and next time, the battle would rage across the planet's surface itself. But, for now, Earth had arrived just in time, and the Zorathians tasted hope once more. Ahead lay a temporary lull, a chance to regroup, heal, and strengthen alliances. But beyond the horizon, in the silent reaches of space, the warlord's shadow still lurked, and the promise of the heart of Zora still thrummed at the center of all destinies. And so, as the Horus settled into orbit, its crews prepared for the long, cosmic struggle yet to come. The Horus loomed above Zora Prime, like a sentinel carved from polished obsidian and starlight. Beneath its planetary shields, violet tempests churned as orbital bombardments from Vraxx's fleet pounded the surface. On the bridge, Admiral Helena Reyes watched the swirling maelstrom of sublight traffic. Zorathian frigates weaving through the ruin of shattered platforms, Earth corvettes methodically laying down suppressive fire, and the jagged silhouettes of enemy dreadnoughts stalking their prey. Status report, she commanded, voice calm but taut as a drawn railgun coil. Commander Jiro Tanaka stepped forward. Surface evacuations are 87% complete. Ground teams report scattered pockets of resistance, but civilian clusters are largely safe in vaults. However, Vraxx's flagship, the Scourge Eternal, has breached the upper ionosphere and is positioning itself for a direct strike on Chalunas. Its gravitic lances could collapse whole canyons if unopposed. Reyes' gaze sharpened. Then we stop it here. All batteries to full power. Lieutenant Covet, calculate firing solutions for a trivector assault on the Scourge. Ayana Covet's fingers danced across her holo-display. Admiral, we have 3 viable attack vectors. The first exploits a distortion in the local gravimetric field, high risk of spatial shear. The second threads between two drifting void mines, requires pinpoint timing. The third is a broadside through the plasma veil. Shields will flare at 20% capacity. My recommendation, the void mine corridor. We can neutralize the mines en route with interceptor drones. Reyes gave the order. Void mine corridor it is. Lieutenant Radoff, deploy the counter drones. Immediately, outside, the Horus unfolded its hidden bays, sleek, dart-shaped drones slung from magnetic rails, each carrying a microsingularity dampener. They streaked into the void, engines flaring with pale blue afterburn, homing on the shimmering orbs that hovered like monstrous jellyfish in the gravity well. When they reached their targets, the dampeners blossomed, their fields entwining the mines, until the singularities collapsed in silent implosions. No supernova, no fallout, just the faintest echo across the Horus's sensors. With path clear, Covert reported, all fire arcs aligned. The Dreadnought pivoted its massive hull. From its flanks, 3 magnetic railguns glowed with concentrated energy. Below, in the violet storms of Zora Prime, the Scourge Eternal's dorsal spines traced luminous arcs of charged matter as it prepared its obliteration salvo. On the bridge of the Scourge, Captain Vraxx snarled in Zargathian gutturals, "Unleash everything planetfall in 3 minutes." Back on the Horus, Lieutenant Radoff announced, "Lock acquired on Scourge Eternal. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The railguns discharged in unison. Emerald lances sheared through the asteroid belts and magnetic storms. Cleaving through the hardened dorsal plates of the Scourge, the flagship recoiled, its shields flickering under the onslaught. A secondary volley from side-mounted mass drivers followed, each projectile a sliver of moving mountain that gouged along the black hull. Shields down to 60%, crackled the enemy comfeed. Vrax's howl of rage echoed faintly through space. He gestured wildly, and the Scourge's plasma turrets retaliated, their searing bolts strafing the Horus's shields. Energy arcs danced across the viewports, fractals of violent color against the Dreadnought's stolid form. Raise forward shields to maximum. Reyes ordered, divert all reactor output, suppress the plasma surges. Lieutenant Covert, recalibrate turret yaw. Prepare for a follow-up spread. The Magnev bore cannons hummed, channels of antimatter coalescing into braided beams. When they discharged, the resulting explosion blossomed like twin supernovae against the void, ripping open a pockmarked anomaly in the Scourge's flank. Hull plating peeled back, revealing a latticework of glowing conduits and half-exposed energy cores. Critical hit. Tanaka exulted. Now's our chance to press the advantage. Squadron Alpha, engage the crippled cruiser. Squadron Beta, provide anti-fighter umbrella. From launch bays, hundreds of sleek fighters poured out, Earth's Valkyr D-class interceptors and Zorathian crystal-wing fighters, dancing together in lethal choreography. The Scourge's escort vessels, a mixed flotilla of dagger-shaped corvettes, rallied to protect their leader, but the Martian-forged railguns of the Horus pummeled their ranks, cutting swathes through the enemy defense lines. Momentum shifted in the Horus's favor. With its shields battered and its escort decimated, the Scourge Eternal limped toward Zora Prime's night side, its warp core dangerously unstable. Captain Vraxx, pride wounded as deeply as his ship, snarled to his bridge crew, "Prepare the self-destruct. If we cannot have victory, we take this planet with us below." In the violet auroras of the southern hemisphere, thousands of Zorathian citizens watched in horror as the massive warship faltered across the sky. A unified gasp rose from the ground as electromagnetic pulses knocked out exterior lights, bathing shattered spires in starlight. But the Horus would not allow desperation to become tragedy. They're initializing self-destruct, Covert warned. "We have 90 seconds before containment failure. Cut them off," Reyes said. "Commander Tanaka, full burn into intercept trajectory. We disable that warp core. Now." The Dreadnought's engines flared, and the vessel slipped from standard orbit into a high-energy chase. Every structural strut groaned as the Horus endured gravitational strain far beyond its design threshold. Below decks, maintenance crews worked at breakneck speed, rerouting emergency power and reinforcing bulkheads to withstand the maneuvers. On the Scourge's bridge, alarms blared. "Core containment at 50%, bellowed an officer. Vraxx slammed a clawed gauntlet onto the console. "If they board us, they die with us." A boarding pod ejected from the Horus's ventral bay, hurtling toward the enemy flagship. Inside, a platoon of Zorathian Marines and Earth Rapid Response teams braced for impact. Through reinforced viewports, they saw the flickering campaign lights of the Scourge's hangar deck. Moments later, magnetic clamps snapped them into place. The boarding teams stormed through splintered bulkheads, plasma blades igniting in graceful arcs. They moved like ghosts through corridors warped by radiation leaks, dispatching Zargathian sentries with precise, controlled force. A crackling corridor led them to the heart of the ship, the warp core chamber. A cathedral of humming energy dot there, three teams converged. The core's containment field rippled as micro-discharges danced across its plasma columns. The lead, Zorathian Sergeant, Talleyrand Sil, key to crystalline interface. Override bypass now. The panel flashed red. Steam hissed. Disarm sequence activated. Back on the bridge of the Horus, Kovet held her breath. Boarding team. Did they? A burst of static, then Talleyrand's voice over secure comm. Warp core disarmed. Containment stable. Self-destruct offline. Scourge eternal at our mercy. A cheer erupted on the Horus's bridge. Reyes allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. Well done. Secure the flagship strap-in for tow, and send a message to Vraxx. His hammer has fallen. As the Scourge Eternal drifted inert, its black hull bruised and crippled, the defenders of Zora Prime released a collective exhale across the violet storms. The battered allies watched Earth's Dreadnought stand sentinel, the banner of two worlds waving in the cosmic winds. On the bridge, Reyes turned to Tanaka. Signal the council. Tell them we've won this battle but not the war. We hold here until Zora Prime rebuilds its defenses. Then we march to Vraxx's lair, and we end this. Tanaka saluted. With pleasure, Admiral. His eyes gleamed with determined fire. Far below, the crystalline towers of Chalunas quivered under emergent dawn. The storm clouds parted enough to reveal shattered, but still standing spires. Survivors poured from vaults into the fractured streets. Hope rekindled in their hearts. High above, in the silent sea of stars, Earth's Dreadnought and its Zorathian allies prepared to face the next wave. The violet storm was passing. The calm before the final confrontation had come. And as the twin suns of Zora Prime pierced the haze, two civilizations joined by sacrifice and valor stood ready to challenge whatever darkness lurked beyond the void. The twin suns of Zora Prime crested the horizon in twin arcs of amethyst and rose, their light refracting through the shattered spires of Chalunas like a promise reborn. Beneath their glow, the battlefield lay silent, where once the Scourge Eternal had loomed like an omen of doom. Now its broken hulk drifted tethered to the Horus by massive grapnel chains. Fragments of Zargathian fighters, charred and shattered, lay scattered across the violet plains. Relics of the titanic clash that had turned the tide of war. On the bridge of the Horus, Admiral Helena Reyes stood before the panoramic viewport, arms folded as she watched Zorathian sky wardens soaring in graceful loops. Around the crippled flagship, their crystalline wings caught the morning light in prismatic flares, a living testament to resilience amid ruin. At her side, Commander Jiro Tanaka reviewed the status board. All civilian clusters have been evacuated to vaults. Tanaka reported, medical drones are tending to the wounded, and our engineering teams are reinforcing the planetary shield grid. President Oriel and General Shalrin request a meeting on the lunar spire. 8 hours from now, Reyes nodded. Prepare. A formal invitation. We'll discuss reconstruction and joint defense. But first, let's honor those who gave their lives. She turned to the communications officer. Broadcast to all allied forces. Observe a moment of silence at 0800 local Zoran time. Below decks, tone generators hummed as every ship and station in orbit emitted a single, deep resonant pulse, galactic heartbeat mourning the fallen. Across the violet-streaked skies, humans and Zorathians alike looked up, united in sorrow and solidarity. In the ruins of Chalunas, Chancellor Oriel Virist stood atop the shattered steps of the grand spire, her opaline robes flowing on a gentle breeze. The platform was crowded with delegates from every Zorathian province, their bioluminescent veins glowing with emotion. At her side, General Shalrin, plate armor still streaked with ash, raised a crystalline banner, the symbol of the Imperium now entwined with Earth's crest. People of Zora Prime, Ariel's voice rang clear through field amplifiers. We have faced the abyss and emerged unbowed. With Earth's Dreadnought and our own brave warriors, we have repelled the darkness. Yet our losses are many, wings fallen, spires toppled, families torn. Today, we honor their sacrifice by forging a future stronger than any armor. A hush fell as the crowd bowed their heads. In that silence, the distant hum of the Horus's engines was a reminder of an alliance born in fire. Then, with a clarion call, Zorathian sky wardens and Earth's Valkyr fighters performed a synchronized flypast, weaving ribbons of light across the sky, an aerial ballet that spoke of unity beyond words. 8 hours later, the Lunar Spire's embassy hall gleamed under artificial starlight. Holographic tapestries depicted the history of both civilizations, Zora Prime's crystalline dawn, Earth's blue marble thriving with life. Long oak tables bore ceremonial foods, Zorathian lumiberry amuse-bouches beside Terran solar grain. Bread. At the head, Admiral Reyes and Chancellor Auriel faced one another. Flanked by their generals and ministers, Auriel reached out, placing a crystalline orb, the heart shard, onto the polished table. It pulsed softly, casting shifting rainbows on the walls. "The shard comes from the heart of Zora," she explained, voice thick with reverence. "It is our essence made manifest. We offer it to you." Helena Reyes, as a token of trust and unity. Reyes bowed her head and accepted the orb in both hands. "I accept on behalf of all Terrans. May this shard bind our peoples in friendship and mutual protection." The orb glowed brighter, responding to the human touch. In that moment, the diplomats felt a tangible bond shimmer through the room. General Shalrin and Commodore Gian May rose to present the Joint Defense Charter. "We propose a combined fleet command," Shalrin announced, "a council equally led by Earth and Zora Prime, sharing technology, intelligence, and training. With the Heart Shard as our symbol, we will patrol these sectors and stand vigilant against any who would threaten peace." Commodore May unfolded a holographic star map. "We can establish relay stations on the outer moons, integrate our shield networks, and co-develop the Tachyon slipstream corridors. Together, we'll ensure no enemy, be it Vraxx or any other, can exploit the void again." Heads nodded in agreement. Drafts were signed. Seals glowed as the glyphs from both civilizations intertwined, binding the pact in law and ritual. As the final signatures completed the document, the Heart Shard let out a radiant pulse that illuminated every face in the hall with hopeful light. Outside, on Luna's lower terraces, crowds gathered to witness the historic signing. Zorathian and Terran flags fluttered side by side. Children from both worlds raced through the gardens, laughter echoing where once only solemn observances had prevailed. Skylifts hummed overhead, bearing supplies and relief workers to the battered remains of Zora Prime via slipstream shuttles. In the distance, the Horus prepared to depart, its bulk dwarfed by the sprawl of the newly constructed relay pylons, each one inscribed with the joint emblem. Commander Tanaka, standing on deck, looked back at the lavender sky projected on the holographic viewport. "We did it," he murmured to Lieutenant Kovet, who nodded, her tattoos glowing softly. "This alliance is stronger than any void. Whatever Vraxx hurls at us next, we'll face it together." Days later, the Dreadnought Horus slipped again into the Tachyon currents, bound for Zora Prime's orbit, but this time not as a lone savior, but as the flagship of a united armada. Beneath its prow, the Heart Shard projected a protective aura over the world below, amplifying shield resonance and bending light into a perpetual aurora of hope. High on the Grand Spire's highest balcony, Chancellor Auriel and Admiral Reyes watched the dreadnoughts wake fade into the void. Zorathians and Terrans gathered at their sides, hand in hand, gazing skyward. For the first time in centuries, the air was alive not with dread, but with promise. Auriel turned to Reyes, her luminous eyes glistening. "This is only the first chapter of our shared destiny." Reyes smiled, her gaze steady. "Then let us write the next one together." Above them, the stars held new potential to civilizations, once strangers, now bound by courage, sacrifice, and an unbreakable alliance. And somewhere beyond the violet storms, in the silent reaches of the void, Vraxx the Unyielding would learn that he was no longer the master of fate. The galaxy had found its balance and would stand united against any who dared unravel it.